welcome to my discussion that is specifically about The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I am going into this thinking that I can do this spoiler-free. I love that books exist that are hundreds of years old that still contain spoilers. I love it. I love it. I'm going to try and keep this spoiler free, but if there is going to be, if I get to a point where I do say something that I want to keep in the video that is spoilery, I will give you a warning. So in my reading of The Count of Monte Cristo over the month of January for Bean's Big Book Bash, I was also keeping a lot of notes. I asked for a big blank book, and I received this, which is humongous, but which I love, and I am using it. So here is this is the first page of my notes that I used for Count of Monte Cristo in the month of January, and I'm gonna refer to it as I talk to you a little bit. So some of the things that I want to point out are that I read 3 other resources, companion texts, along with my reading of The Count of Monte Cristo. And actually I read 4 because I also read the biography of the Black, what is it called? The Black Count by Reese. That's his last name. I can't remember his first name, and I don't have the book sitting in front of me. So I read that as well, and I am not going to talk about that here. I'm just going to try and talk about the fictional experience, the fictional story. So I read The Essays of Revenge by Sir Francis Bacon. I read a poem, The Poison Tree by William Blake. And I read a short story. I read Reflection. I don't know what to call it. I read something, a short something by Oscar Wilde called The Model Millionaire. Of the 3, I think that The Model Millionaire was not very, it did not naturally make connections for me that I thought it might. It is a very different story of a millionaire than the very rich man that we encounter in the last 2/3 of Count of Monte Cristo. I'm not gonna really talk about that one, but I do wanna say a couple of things about the poem. So I'll read the poem. It is A Poison Tree by William Blake. A Poison Tree by William Blake. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe, I told it not, my wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears, and I sunned it with smiles and with soft deceitful wiles, and it grew both day and night till it bore an apple bright, and my foe beheld its shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole, in the morning glad I see, my foe outstretched beneath the tree. So basically, you've got this person who says when they feel angry with someone, if they go straight to the person and they discuss their anger, then their anger dissolves. But if they don't, then they actually cultivate it and it grows into something, and it is impossible to hide from the person who you feel this animosity towards, and they will eventually come at you, and your hatred may kill them. It's pretty heavy for such a simple sounding poem. And then you've got The Essays of Revenge by Sir Francis Bacon. This was first published in 1597. So it's closer, a closer contemporary, although earlier, to Count of Monte Cristo than I am. But some of the things, I just want to pull a couple of quotes out from this very short essay. But a couple of things I want to pull out. The first wrong breaks the law. Revenge of that wrong destroys law itself. If you've read the book, think about that in relation to The Count of Monte Cristo. The first wrong breaks the law. Revenge of that wrong destroys law itself. Ouch. And then another one, I have several here, but I'm just going to read 2. The other one is, this is certain, that a man consumed with a desire for revenge keeps his own wounds open, which otherwise would heal. And I do believe that that is an accurate summary of the Count of Monte Cristo. I just folded that back up, but let me say it one more time. A man consumed with the desire for revenge keeps his own wounds open, which otherwise would heal. I think that's the best summary of the Count of Monte Cristo that could ever be come up with. And he did not write it, obviously, about the Count of Monte Cristo because he wrote it long before the Count of Monte Cristo was ever conceived. I have questions that I posted. I also posted all of these documents. Oscar Wilde's The Model Millionaire, The Poison Tree, Sir Francis Bacon's essay on revenge, as well as the 12 questions that I have here. I don't know that I'll discuss all 12 right now because I want to keep this kind of short. The 12 questions that I myself answered about the book, they are posted on my Instagram account. If you would like to access that, you can go to Instagram. My name there is the same as my name here, Chicky Bean Loves Books. There's a link in my bio to a link tree, and in the link tree, the Count of Monte Cristo is still up. I will be taking it down some point in February, early February. Also, you will see the resources I have pulled together for War and Peace, also posted there currently. Those will stay up until March. But if you want to go and retrieve these resources, it's a Google Doc. You can save it, you can download it. All of the resources that are there are free for the public to use. I am not breaking any copyright laws or anything like that. So feel free. Go for it, take them, use them, make them your own. We'll go over some of the answers to some of the questions for myself. So what other books did this remind you of? So the Count of Monte Cristo, at first I was like, I don't think I've ever read anything like this. At least if I did, I didn't enjoy it. That's my bias going, vengeance is bad. But I have two very clear examples of books that I love, which are all about revenge and vengeance, and wrongs being committed against people who don't deserve them. And those two that stood out to me the most are V for Vendetta, which is a graphic novel, and I highly recommend it. And also, Hamlet. I mean, how could I have forgotten that Hamlet is a revenge story? I love both of those books so much. And so when I came to that realization, I stopped judging the Count of Monte Cristo so hard. Then we have which characters in the book did you like and why? I liked Mercedes. I also really liked the Abbé. I mean, who doesn't like the Abbé? Like, if you are that person, I would love to pick your brain. I mean, I think that he is one of the most sympathetic characters ever created in all of literature, the Abbé. So who wouldn't like the Abbé? Who do I dislike? I really dislike Dantes, and I never resolve that. Even though you will get resolution in the end, more than I am hinting at. I personally was tracking with him all the way until the end of that early on chapter in which I don't want to give spoilers, but I'll say in which he comes out of the water. And at that point, I lose him. He ceases to feel like a real person to me, and it becomes more of like a Marvel comic sort of situation. It's so over the top. So it goes from being something that feels very possible, convenient, but possible, to being something that just feels so ridiculous to me. And I lose all, I mean, you're supposed to lose respect for him, but I lose all respect and like warm feeling. Like I don't ever remember, until I get to the end, I don't ever remember where he's come from. I never think back to like how broken he is because of the things that he's gone through. And I think that's a flaw in this book. Like, and maybe it's a flaw in me. Maybe all of you feel that tug of empathy for him throughout his entire journey. I did not at all. So I really think that Edmond Dantes is the character that I dislike the most. And that's a problem because that's who the whole book is ultimately about. It's a problem for me. Maybe not for you. It's a problem for me. So is Dante's quest for vengeance morally just? My full and carefully thought out response, my thoughtful response is literally the word nope. Is Dante's quest for vengeance morally just? No. And I will refer you back to Sir Francis Bacon. The first wrong breaks the law, and revenge of that wrong destroys the law itself. As well as the man consumed with a desire for revenge keeps his own wounds open, which otherwise would heal. So his vengeance, in my mind, is really him constantly hurting himself again and again and again. And I think that kind of self-hatred is morally unjust. Can vengeance ever stand in for justice? No. I've seen what I've written here, and I just want to elaborate on it a little bit, which is my hesitation in responding. So can vengeance ever stand in for justice? No, I don't think it can. But, I mean, I think they're two entirely separate things. I think vengeance, revenge, and justice are two entirely different things. However, I do think that they can both, they're two different vehicles, but they can both arrive at the same destination. Does that work? Could be two different paths and they both arrive at the same destination. They can both arrive at the same destination. They don't necessarily always do, but they can. But I do think they're two entirely different entities trucking down the road. Does the Count succeed in taking his revenge? I'm not going to answer that one out loud. I think that might be spoilery. I think my response, the explanation of my response would be spoilery. I'm not going to answer number 6 because I think that would be spoilery. Number 7, do you ever disagree with what the Count does? I wrote all, period, the, period, time, period. All the time. Yeah, I disagree with what he does all the time. For example, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler. He gets put in prison without explanation. I mean, we understand as the reader because we are privy to multiple perspectives, but he doesn't understand what has happened. And he loses hope immediately. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that happens early on enough. But the dude, like, I already didn't like him, even when I'm supposed to be feeling sympathy for him. And would I have done better? I don't know, but I think yes. As far as hope, I think yes. He relies too much on the goodness of others, and I'm sure that I could unpack that as an important theme within the book. He relies too much on the goodness of others, and ultimately we find that that is harder to come by than you might think, which is another like fundamentally different view of the world that I have. So do I ever disagree with the Count? Yeah, all the time. I almost never agree with him, ever. And I think it's just because we are fundamentally two entirely different beings. And I don't just mean the vengeance aspect. I mean most of his understanding of the world that affects the choices that he makes and the responses that he has. I have a lack of empathy for them. Maybe I need to look at that in myself, but I also think it's like there in the character. Dante's claims that there is neither happiness nor misery in the world. There is only the comparison of one state with another, nothing more. What does that statement mean in the context of the story and in real life? And it reminded me of Shakespeare. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's all relative, subjective. I do agree with that. I quote that all the time. You know, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's only bad because you think it's bad. Yeah, I do. I think I think that's an important part of the way that I make it through a day. And when I'm having a series of really big obstacles, or even just lots and lots of really small obstacles, you know, I can turn my whole day around by remembering this quote and going, you know what? I can choose to think of this as a bad thing, or I can choose to think of this as a neutral thing, or I can choose to think of this as a great thing. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I do think there is evil, absolutely. There are some things that are truly evil, but in the mundanity of our lives, in the normal everyday to-day encounters, in the average everyday encounters, I would say that most of the time we get to decide for ourselves how we are going to view things that happen to us or for us or around us or by us. As far as what it means within the context of the story, I'm not going to go into that, even though I have a really lengthy response here. I'm not going to go into that just because I think spoilery. Let's see. I'm not going to respond to number 9, spoilery. 10, spoilery. 11, do you feel hopeful upon reading the last words of the story? I had to remind myself of what exactly the last few words of the story are. I'm not going to tell you what the last words are. Do I feel hopeful? Without going into it, yes, but also a little bit frustrated. It took all of this to come to that conclusion. But maybe it does. Maybe it takes that in my own life too. I don't know. Even if that is the case, even if that is what it takes, it's still frustrating. And if you've read it, there's more that you can infer from my answer than if you haven't read it yet. Although I am being quite harsh on the character in this book, I will say I have no regrets about reading this book. Some people, most people, come out of this book and they're like, this was maybe a life-changing experience reading this book, or this is an influential experience reading this book. I think a lot of what the book is addressing are things that I have addressed long ago through other texts. A very different story, but a book that I would recommend for addressing the same ideas as are found in this book ultimately would be The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. So I've done a lot of hard work with a lot of the message in this already. I do not regret at all reading this book. And I do think, like, I've had a lot of 8th grade students, mostly boys, read this book and just love it to bits and pieces for all of the things that drive me nuts about it, right? But I think a lot of adults come out of this book and they're like, this was an eye-opening experience or a prodding experience for me. And it wasn't that for me, only because I was often thinking about what was being presented in this in light of other things that I've already read and experienced and concluded. That's the big part there. Concluded. And it didn't provide enough impetus for me to question my conclusions. A lot of books do. A lot of movies do. I'm not a closed-minded reader. Mostly. Sometimes I'm sure I have my things. But this definitely could have. And it just wasn't, and I do not mean to sound like superior in any way, shape, or form, but it just wasn't new thinking for me. Because I've already done a lot of hard work with a lot of the thinking that would be new to a lot of people with this book. So, do I feel hopeful upon reading it? Yes, but also super frustrated. I feel like I just went on a tangent and I don't really know what I was talking about. Which is exactly the experience I had with reading this book. I feel like he just went on a tangent and I really don't know what he's talking about. Over and over again, I felt that. Okay, the last question number 12. What was the author's purpose in writing this book? I think he had multiple purposes. I think all authors do. I think he wanted to entertain. I think he wanted to provide a way to, like he does in so many of his other work, I learned, immortalize his father. And I think, and the things that he came to understand his father to embody, the ideals that his father embodied. I also think he's giving a commentary on his culture and the political climate of his time. And I think that ultimately it's timeless. It is timeless. This is not necessarily my favorite book. Oh, that's what I was saying when I went on my tangent. I don't regret reading this book at all. I enjoyed the experience, even though I was frustrated, even though I hate the main character. Well, hate is a very strong word. I greatly dislike the main character, and I was frustrated with so much of the excess. There's so much excess in this book. However, it is a fun adventure story. It is well written. It is incredibly accessible, and it is timeless. And I think that it's timeless because I think one of the things the author, I don't know if he intended to do this, but probably does, is you can find at least a piece of yourself in this book. Anyone can. Everyone can. This book is like a microcosm of human existence in a lot of ways. And in that, it's brilliant. And I'm glad that I finally read it. However, I do not anticipate ever reading it again. Never. Quotes. My favorite quotes, which I have recorded here. So some of my favorite quotes. For air is freedom. For in propensity, prayer seems but a mere assemblage of words until the day when, I can't read my own handwriting, until the day when misfortune comes to explain to the unhappy sufferer the sublime language by which he invokes the pity of heaven. I can't read my own writing. You seem to turn over the pages of my past life far better than I could do myself. That's one of my very favorite lines. But now I have this one is heartbreaking to me. But now I have forgiven the world for the love of you. Here I am, pursuing you remorselessly. Woman is sacred. The woman one loves is holy. All human wisdom is contained in the words wait and hope. The heart breaks when it has swelled too much in the warm breath of hope, then finds itself enclosed in cold reality. If you've read this book, do let me know your thoughts on it in the end. Do let me know your thoughts on it in the comments. It was a great experience for me, and the prompts are still up. The visual prompts, 4 of them, are still up on Instagram. If you use the hashtag BeansBigBookBash, you should be able to find them if you want to respond to any of them. Or if you just want to leave a comment here and let me know, I'd love to have a conversation with you about the book, and we can get spoilery in the comments if you like. But I wanted to keep this one as kind of generalized as I possibly could and still get to share my deep, deep thoughts and personal experience with the reading of this book. Anyway, The Count of Monte Cristo, what an experience. What a way to start the year. It will definitely stay with me. Final thoughts. It will stay with me. I think I'm still processing it. If I ever change my mind about Edmond Dantes, you'll be the first person I tell. War and Peace in February. Read with me. Happy reading and see you later.